Hello students, Mr. Long here. Today we are going to be discussing a review and overview of the Enlightenment in Europe, which you guys have already um, read and annotated for your reading packet. So this should be very, very familiar. But this video lecture will be accompanied with answering some questions, and then you guys will actually be able to use those questions in that handout on your test that's coming up this week. So it's super important that everyone really pays attention to this video lecture and follow the step-by-step directions that I have for you guys. So everyone is going to obviously need something to write with to answer these questions, but also you're going to need some sort of highlighter because you will be highlighting key words that are in each question to help you understand it a little bit better. So the way you will see it on the screen is my advice is you're going to see 3 or 4 questions per slide. And what I would do is I would hit pause first, and everything that is highlighted in yellow, whatever color highlighter you chose, I would highlight those words in the questions. Then after you're done highlighting those questions, or those words in the questions, excuse me, I would hit play again and then listen to the video lecture and then fill in the blanks that is accompanied with the video lecture. So here we go. So number 1 says, what was the movement that stressed reason and thought and the power of individuals to solve their own problems? Now, of course, guys, we should know that this time period is known as the Enlightenment. Now, next to Enlightenment, and I didn't write this on the slides presentation, but I want you to put down in quotes Age of Reason, because that is another name for the Enlightenment time period. So, Age of Reason, you should also write right next to the Enlightenment. Um, and remember, guys, this time period is a new way of thinking. People are no longer going to rely on other people, such as a ruler, an absolute monarch, king or queen, or the church to tell them what the truth is. They're going to figure things out on their own. So it's all about the individual rather than relying on people for what the truth is. Number 2, there's going to be 2 really important Enlightenment thinkers. They're actually from England, and they're going to really start this Enlightenment time period. So the one is Thomas Hobbes, and the other is John Locke. Now, even though they are both English political thinkers who started the Enlightenment, they're going to have very, very different views um, about the Enlightenment and their opinions on certain things when it comes to politics, when it comes to government and absolute monarchy, and so on. So make sure you have the highlights and make sure that you are filling in the correct blanks. So let's talk about Thomas Hobbes first. Now, Thomas Hobbes was a little extreme. He felt that every single person was naturally wicked and selfish. Now, when I say the word naturally, right above naturally, you can write this in so you remember it. That means everyone's born wicked and selfish. And that's just the way they are. So, according to Thomas Hobbes, people would have to hand over their rights in order to be ruled. Okay. In exchange for handing over their rights, people would gain law and order. So, because people are born wicked and selfish, now we got to understand what those 2 words mean. Selfish means you only care about yourself, and another word for wicked would be evil. So, because he felt that everyone was born evil and only cared about themselves, that they would have to hand over all of their rights to a ruler in order to gain law and order. He also felt that rulers needed total power to keep their citizens under control. Because remember, if someone is selfish, they only care about themselves, they don't care about anyone else, and they're also wicked or evil. So, in order to protect everyone, people have to give up their rights to the ruler. So, in this case, which is number 6, what kind of monarchy did Thomas Hobbes feel worked best? Of course, it would be an absolute monarchy, meaning that the ruler, the king or queen, would have total, complete control and power over their subjects or citizens. Now, moving on to John Locke, who is this other English political thinker or Enlightenment thinker, he was a complete opposite. Okay. He felt that people were able to learn from life experience and improve themselves. If you make a mistake, you know that mistake, you figure things out, and you improve on it. That's all he's saying. So he says basically not making the same mistake twice. So you're going to learn from experience, not to make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And in that sense, you're going to improve yourself as an individual. Number 8, Locke felt that people had the natural ability to govern their own affairs and to look after the welfare of society. So once again, natural means they're born with it. So Thomas Hobbes, who I just spoke about, said everyone's born wicked and selfish. In other words, they only care about themselves and they're evil. Now, John Locke, complete opposite opinion. He felt that everyone has or was born with the ability to control themselves, to take care of themselves, and also to look after the best for everyone else, which is another word for society. John Locke is definitely going to criticize absolute monarchy. He feels that absolute monarchy is the worst type of way to govern people. And he favored the idea of self-government, people being in control of themselves, or electing people to make decisions for them. So, according to John Locke, number 10, all people are born free and equal with 3 natural rights. And once again, natural rights are rights that you are born with. So, continuing with John Locke, the 3 natural rights that John Locke believed in that everyone was born with was life, liberty, and property. And according to John Locke, the purpose of government is to protect these natural rights that every single human being is born with. Now, according to John Locke, if the government fails to do their job protecting our natural rights that we're born with, we as the people have the right to overthrow the government and set up a government that actually works for us. Okay? And according to John Locke, all of the power of the government should come from the consent or the permission of the people. Okay, so moving on to number 15. Number 15 says, where did the Enlightenment reach its height in the mid 1700s? So, height meaning when did it become, or excuse me, where did it become the most popular in the mid 1700s? Which country? And of course, it's going to be France. Okay. France is where it's all going to go down, where all these Enlightenment ideas, excuse me, are going to be spreading to other parts of Europe, to other parts of the world, especially United States. When the United States becomes a very, very young country after they separate themselves from Great Britain, they're going to use these Enlightenment ideas to do that. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. Number 16, what could people apply to all aspects of life according to the philosophes? Now, remember, philosophes, excuse me, is a French word for philosophers, and we should know what a philosopher is. A philosopher is like a really smart person, someone who is always thinking about something, and they have ideas and they have opinions about things. So, according to the Enlightenment thinkers, reason, which means there's always a reason for something, and reason is a rational way of thinking. Okay. Number 17, what were the 5 concepts that the philosophers believed in? The 5 were reason, which I just talked about, nature, happiness, progress, and finally, liberty. Okay. So reason is a way of thinking. Nature, obviously, having to do with your surroundings, what's going on around you. Happiness, everyone should be able to be happy. Progress, meaning moving forward, getting better at stuff rather than taking a step back. And then, of course, liberty is another word for freedom. Number 18, who stated the following quote? I do not agree with a word you say, but will defend to the death your right to say it. Of course, that is going to be Voltaire. And hopefully, we understand that this quote is means one thing: freedom of speech. People should have the freedom of speech. Now, even though you don't agree with someone, you should respect their opinion and respect the right that they have to voice their own opinion. So, once again, that is coming from Voltaire, who is another Enlightenment thinker. And it's important because obviously here in the United States, we have freedom of speech. It's our first part of our First Amendment. And we get all of our ideas that we have here in the United States, a lot of them at least, from this time period of the Enlightenment, from these Enlightenment thinkers. Montesquieu is really another important Enlightenment thinker. He's really going to give us ideas here in the United States on how to actually set up our government. So number 20 says, Montesquieu believed in the division of power among different branches of government. So we should know here in the United States, and we also talked about this with Greece and Rome, but there are three branches of government. So we have the executive, we have the legislative, and finally the judicial branch. You guys need to know the names of all three of those branches or the powers, which I just said, and they're also highlighted, which means you should be highlighting everything in yellow. And the job of the executive power is to enforce the laws, okay? To make sure that if the law is broken, there's going to be some sort of consequence. The legislative branch or power makes the laws, and then finally the judicial power interprets or they explain what the laws mean. Now, it's important for us to understand why there is three branches of government, okay? It's called the separation of powers. And Montesquieu comes up with this idea to make sure that one branch or one power does not get more power than the other, and that they remain equal in power to each other. Now, even though they have different jobs or responsibilities, that doesn't make a difference. They're still equal in power to each other. So that's very important for us to all understand. Number 25, Montesquieu's book on the separation of powers and checks and balances helps form the basis of the U.S. Constitution, okay, which is still the living document that we go by with our government here in the United States right now. So once again, I'm always going to keep on referring back to these important Enlightenment thinkers and philosophers. They gave us a lot of ideas that formed our government here in the United States when we broke away from Great Britain and became an independent country. So our next Enlightenment thinker, his name was Rousseau. And number 26 says, who stated the following quote, man is born free and everywhere he is in chains. Of course, it's going to be Rousseau. And according to Rousseau, the only good type of government, according to him, was freely formed by the people. In other words, a direct democracy. Now, we talked about this when we're talking about Greece and Rome, but remember, a direct democracy means that the citizens are actually playing an active role in government, which was different than an indirect democracy, which would be like a republic. Now, remember, under a republic, which the Romans created, we, the citizens, as long as you're adult, we vote for representatives, and those representatives make decisions for us. So Rousseau believes that people should be making the decisions themselves, not electing people to make decisions for them. Number 28, what did people have to give up in favor of the common good of society? Excuse me. According to him, people have to give up some of their freedoms and rights. In order for society to run correctly, in order for everyone to be safe and protected, people are going to have to give up some of their rights and freedoms. Now, number 29, we're going to take two Enlightenment thinkers, Thomas Hobbes, which is the first guy we talked about, and Rousseau, which we're talking about right now, their view of social contract and how it differed. So Hobbes believed that it was an agreement between society and its government. Okay, not the individual, but society and its government. Rousseau believed it was an agreement among free individuals to create a society or government that works for them. Okay, so kind of like what John Locke was saying, if the government isn't doing their job, then we as the people have the right to overthrow the government and set up a government that works best for us. Okay, so those are the major differences between Hobbes and Rousseau. Number 30, Rousseau felt that all people were equal and that titles of nobility should be abolished. Now, abolished, you can write this right next to abolish, means to get rid of. Okay? Remember who nobles are, guys. Nobles are, they're like royalty. They're really wealthy landowners. You can't just become a noble. It all has to do with being born into that family. So according to Rousseau, everyone should be equal, regardless of how much money you have or how little money you have. It shouldn't make a difference. And then 31, Rousseau's idea inspired many leaders of the French Revolution to overthrow the monarchy in 1789. I'm not going to get into the French Revolution right now because this will be part of our next unit along with the American Revolution, but hopefully we get the understanding, guys, that all of these brand new Enlightenment thinkers and their ideas are going to spread everywhere, all throughout Europe, to the United States. And it's going to start revolutions in other parts of the world. If it could happen in one country, then it can happen in another country. Okay, but we'll eventually get there. Okay, so our next Enlightenment thinker, BECCARIA, believed that a person accused of a crime, even if they're a criminal, should receive a speedy trial and that torture should never be used. Okay? So this Enlightenment thinker is all about giving rights to criminals, people that break laws. Even though you break a law, you should still receive some sort of rights. So once again, here in the United States, excuse me, we are going to borrow ideas from this guy because if you break a law here in the US, you just don't go straight to jail. Okay? Obviously, depending on the severity of the crime, how bad the crime is that someone commits, they of course will go to court. They'll be put on trial, and then it will be up to the jury to find them guilty or innocent. And then from there, the judge will sentence them depending if they are guilty or not. So number 33, what should be abolished according to him? Capital punishment and execution. So that's another word for capital punishment. So doesn't make a difference on the severity of the crime, how bad the crime is. No one should ever be executed or killed for committing a crime. That is what he is saying. 34. According to him, government should seek the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Finally, our last Enlightenment thinker, Mary Wollstonecraft, she felt that women should be able to receive an education equal to that of a man. So Mary Wollstonecraft is all about equality for women. Okay? Regardless of your gender, men and women should be equal and should have equal rights and should have equal opportunities. She felt that women should enter the fields of medicine and politics if they wanted to. Women should have a choice. If they want to be an educator, if they want to be a politician, if they want to be a doctor, if they want to be anything, they should have that right because they should be considered equal to that of a male. 37. This is a key term. This is a vocab word. But what are salons? Salons, back in the day during the Enlightenment time period, were social gatherings. So they were places where people got together and they talked. Okay. And of course, they're going to talk about all these brand new Enlightenment thinkers, these brand new Enlightenment ideas. And their talks are going to spread. And that is how the Enlightenment spread so quickly, is by word of mouth. So think of a salon, ladies or even guys, if you've been to a salon before, think of what happens when you walk into a salon. There's a bunch of people in there. They're getting their hair done, they're getting their nails done, and almost 100% of the time, they're talking, talking, talking. Regardless if it's gossip or not, they're still talking. And that's exactly what a salon was when we're referring to it during the Enlightenment time period. It is a place where people get together and they talk about these new ideas, and then these new ideas spread very quickly. We talked about the scientific revolution, number 38. And because of the scientific revolution, that is really going to kickstart the Enlightenment. Because people are able to prove something themselves and actually see it with their own eyes, they're going to believe and rely on themselves. And they're not going to rely on the ruler, the king or queen, or they're definitely not going to rely on the church, because they can prove something on their own at this point. So the scientific revolution gave people the confidence that human reason or thought could solve problems. Excuse me. So if you wanted to solve a problem, you could figure out a way. That's all it is saying. Okay. 39. During the Enlightenment, people began to question openly, and I mentioned this, their beliefs and the teachings of the church. So if you guys can remember way back when, during the scientific revolution questions, I talked about the geocentric theory and the heliocentric theory. And for years and years and years, the church was teaching the geocentric theory, meaning the earth is the center of the universe, and all planets, including the sun, rotate around the earth because God created earth. And if God created earth, it is the most important, it is in the center, it is in the middle, and everything else rotates around it. But of course, when you have scientists and these new instruments, such as like the telescopes, you can physically prove that theory to not be correct. You can physically prove that the sun is the center and that all planets, including Earth, rotate around the sun. So that is going to make a lot of people question the church. A lot of people are going to leave the church because they have the feeling that the church has been lying to them, and the church is going to lose lots of money and power. Number 40, before the scientific revolution, people accepted the mysteries of the universe as the workings, of course, of God. And now scientists were able to solve the mysteries through math and science. And of course, who did people look for to guide them after they turned away from the church? So after people figured out that they couldn't trust the church anymore, and they can start thinking on their own and figuring things out on their own, they became very, very independent, and they looked to themselves to find the answers. So that is going to go ahead and conclude this video lecture. Please make sure, if you did not, rewind and make sure you have all the highlights and you have all the correct fill in the blanks. You will be able to use this handout only on your upcoming quiz that is coming up.